We have no plans to invade. That was the message from Russia's foreign minister after talks with the US about Russian intentions in Ukraine. His American counterpart said their discussions in Geneva had been frank and substantive, but also warned of massive consequences if Moscow were to attack Ukraine. Russia has amassed 100,000 troops near its borders with Ukraine, leading to grave international concern and to several European countries reinforcing NATO's military presence in Eastern Europe. President Putin has demanded that Ukraine be stopped from ever joining NATO. Russia used to control much of the region, but many of those neighbouring nations have now joined the military alliance of European and North American countries, of which the UK is a part. From Geneva, here's our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale.
More Russian forces on the move. Surface-to-air missiles in the country's far east, due to join what Moscow says are military exercises near Ukraine. Part of the growing build-up of troops and equipment revealed by images of strategic locations close to the border. What Western powers fear may be preparation for war. But for now, the diplomacy continues too. America's and Russia's top diplomats met in Geneva and at first couldn't even agree how to greet one another, with one question on everyone's lips.
Is an invasion likely, as President Biden suggested?
Mr. Lavrov seemed to suggest it was up to the United States and later dismissed talk of invasion as hysterical rhetoric designed to provoke Ukraine.
What does Russia want most? An unstable, dependent Ukraine or a new sphere of influence in Eastern Europe?
We are not trying to get a sphere of influence, but what NATO is doing shows it considers Ukraine to be a part of its sphere of influence.
To the west, Ukraine is an independent, sovereign nation. That means it has a right to self-determination, free from Russian control. And if it wants to join NATO or any other international alliance, well, that's for it to decide. Russia's view is different. It sees the former Soviet country as historically within its sphere of influence, and also strategically important. Crimea was annexed in part to protect Russia's access to the Black Sea. And as for NATO membership, that would be seen as a threat to Russia's core security. That's why President Putin wants NATO to rule out Ukraine ever becoming a member and withdraw its forces from Eastern Europe. America's Secretary of State rejected these as non-starters and once again sought to deter any military action.
We've been clear. If any Russian military forces move across Ukraine's border, that's a renewed invasion. It will be met with swift, severe, and a united response from the United States and our partners and allies.
There was no breakthrough at the talks here today, no deal to reduce the threat of war. But there was agreement for diplomacy to continue. The US will put forward ideas for more security cooperation next week. Both sides will meet again after that. These are turbulent times, but for now Russia appears willing to continue talking, and Western diplomats hope that might mean not fighting. James Landale, BBC News, Geneva.
Let's go now to our Moscow correspondent, Steve Rosenberg, who's outside the Kremlin for us. And Steve, after those talks, are we any clearer about what Vladimir Putin wants and what he's planning?
Not really, Rita, no. And this is the key question right now. What is Vladimir Putin thinking? What is he planning? What is his end game? Is all of this saber-rattling simply a negotiating tactic to bring the Americans to the table and then squeeze concessions out of them? Or is it a precursor to military action? We simply don't know because President Putin is keeping everyone guessing. Now, some people here believe that Mr. Putin sees himself as a leader on a mission to bring Ukraine back into Russia's orbit, to re-establish, recreate a sphere of influence for Moscow in this part of the world, to push the West back and basically to rewrite the results of the Cold War. And if that is the case, well, that begs the question, the West's threat of colossal sanctions against Russia, will that make Mr. Putin pause for thought?
Thank you very much. Steve Rosenberg reporting there from Moscow.